I'm going to share 7 Bible verses with you, along with the deep lessons and ideas that change the way I see things. We'll read those verses together. Maybe one of them will speak to you in a special way. I believe that everything we do has a spiritual side, even everyday things like how we handle money. Money is a tool, something we use to help us, but we often give it a lot of importance. How we spend, save, or use money shows a lot about what we believe and what matters to us. I believe God wants us to take care of everything in life with Him, and that includes money. But money is a tricky subject for many Christians. Some people think, if only I had more money, while others feel guilty for having it. There are even extreme ideas like believing you must give away all your money or always give exactly 10%. A lot of these beliefs come from the culture around us, the church we grew up in, how our parents handled money, and even our personalities. I think the Bible makes it clear how God wants us to handle money so we can live a good, peaceful life. God wants us to have a full and meaningful life. How we use money can either help us live that way or cause trouble. I've made lots of mistakes with money. Sometimes I spend too much, and other times I'm too stingy. When I mess up, I try to notice what's going on in my heart without feeling ashamed. I bring it to God in prayer or talk it over with trusted friends. The 7 beliefs and verses. Number 1, God owns everything. This belief deeply resonates with me because it shifts how I view everything I have, from time to possessions, and even my heart. There are so many Bible verses that emphasize God's ownership over all things, but one that truly stands out is 1 Chronicles 29:11. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. When I read this verse, it feels like a wake-up call, a reminder of the immense power and generosity of God. It's humbling to think that everything we see, touch, and experience belongs to Him. This realization changes how I approach life, especially when it comes to money or material things. Instead of seeing them as burdens or something I need to hold on to tightly, I can see them as reflections of God's greatness. Every resource we have is a gift, an example of His generosity, and a chance for us to steward well what already belongs to Him. Another verse that echoes this truth is Deuteronomy 10:14. To the Lord your God belong the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth, and everything in it. This verse is a gentle but firm reminder of who is truly in control. And it's not me. It's incredible to think about how generous God is in sharing life and resources with us when He doesn't have to. The earth, the sky, and everything within them belong to Him, yet He entrusts us with so much. When I reflect on this, it helps me release the pressure of trying to control everything. I don't have to be in charge. I just need to trust Him and use what He gives with care and gratitude. Knowing that all of this belongs to God inspires me to be more generous, humble, and intentional in how I live. Number 2, contentment is learned. True contentment is something that grows within us. It's not a switch we can flip or a feeling we can force. It comes from a deeper place, rooted in trust and connection with God. Philippians 4:12-13 captures this perfectly. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. These words remind us that contentment is a journey, not an instant destination. Paul, who wrote these verses, experienced hardship, uncertainty, and even imprisonment. Yet he found peace because his strength didn't come from his circumstances. It came from God. This kind of peace is only possible when we stop chasing after things to validate us or make us feel worthy. Contentment is born from our relationship with God, where we know we're loved and cared for no matter what. It's not about what we achieve or accumulate. It's about knowing we're safe as God's children. This understanding frees us from the endless pressure to prove ourselves to others or even to ourselves. For me, learning to be content has been a slow but rewarding process. I still remember starting this journey during a Bible study when I was 22. Back then, I didn't fully grasp what contentment really meant. Now, in my mid-30s, I've come to see it more clearly, though I'm still learning every day. What brings me comfort is knowing that God doesn't expect me to perfect contentment overnight. Instead, He gently teaches me through life's ups and downs. This truth has given me peace, reminding me that I don't have to fake contentment. I can let God shape it in me over time. Number 3, behaviors reveal inner beliefs. Ecclesiastes 5:10 has always spoken deeply to me. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. It's a verse that cuts straight to the heart of how we often see money, not just as a tool, but as something that can dominate our thoughts and desires. It made me stop and reflect on my own relationship with money, not just in how I earned it, but in how I spent it, saved it, and even worried about it. This verse taught me something crucial. Money itself isn't the problem. It's the love of money, the belief that more will finally bring me happiness or security. I realized that whenever I let money define my sense of peace or worth, I was giving it power over me. If I thought a bigger paycheck or a fuller bank account would solve my problems or make me feel safe, those thoughts became my master. I wasn't truly free. One of the most eye-opening things I've learned is that how I handle money reflects what's happening in my heart. If I'm clinging to every dollar, it might mean I'm struggling with trusting God to provide for me. If I'm overspending, maybe I'm trying to fill a void or chase a feeling of happiness that money can't truly give. Watching my habits with money has become like holding up a mirror to my soul. It's not always comfortable, but it's helped me grow. It reminds me to ask myself what I really value and whether I'm trusting God as my source of true contentment. 4, money is spiritual. The way we handle money is deeply connected to our spiritual lives because we are, at our core, spiritual beings. In Matthew 6:24, Jesus says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." This verse struck me because it's not just about money, it's about our hearts. Who are we ultimately serving? What truly drives us? This doesn't mean we can't have money, use it, or even enjoy it. Money itself isn't the problem, it's just paper, a tool society gave value to. The issue lies in whether money becomes the master of our decisions and desires. How we use money reveals so much about what's going on inside of us. Are we generous, or do we cling tightly? Are we chasing more out of fear, or do we see money as something to use for God's purposes? For me, this verse made it clear. It's not about the money in my wallet, but the condition of my heart. There's a relational aspect to this too. As spiritual beings, we're created in God's image, and that means we're created to love. If God designed me to love, then I want every part of my life, even how I handle money, to reflect that love. I believe money can be spiritual because we are spiritual. It's not just a transaction, it's an opportunity to give, to serve, and to make a difference. When I approach money with this mindset, it shifts everything. Instead of striving to earn more just to feel secure or accomplished, I'm reminded that God is my provider. That keeps me from falling into the trap of putting myself in charge and trying to control everything. I know this verse has been analyzed and discussed in theology countless times, but for me, it's personal. It's a verse that helps me recenter my heart and keeps me grounded. It reminds me to ask myself who I'm really serving and to choose God every time. 5. The 5th lesson is about working with God, not just for money, approval, or to meet expectations. Work is more than earning a paycheck or trading hours for income, although that's part of it. At its core, it's about partnering with God in what we do. It's about seeing our efforts as an act of faith, purpose, and even worship. When I think of work this way, it shifts from being a grind to something much more meaningful. Some verses that inspire me aren't directly about money, but about how God views life, rest, and purpose as gifts. One of my favorites is Matthew 11:28, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." This verse paints such a beautiful picture of partnership. When we work with God, it's like taking on a yoke designed to fit perfectly, not too heavy, not overwhelming. It reminds me that God doesn't want me to struggle alone. He invites me to find joy and fulfillment in Him as the true source of sustenance, the bread of life. Work, in this sense, becomes less about survival and more about connection and trust. Proverbs 22:7 also hits home. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. I've felt the weight of this truth personally. When I've been in credit card debt, it felt like chains. I couldn't ignore the anxiety of repayment, the fear of damaging my credit, or the constant thought of owing something. These systems, while created by society, can quickly become traps, limiting freedom and peace of mind. Debt, I've learned, doesn't just demand money, it demands attention, energy, and sometimes even joy. This verse pushes me to make wiser financial choices and to prioritize freedom, both financially and spiritually. When I look at work through this lens, it's no longer just about earning or paying off debt. It's about aligning my efforts with God's purpose and finding freedom in the process. Whether that's through wise financial stewardship or remembering to rest in His promises, it's clear to me that true fulfillment comes from working with Him, not just for worldly gain. 6. The sixth lesson is about understanding that my possessions don't define me. Owning something nice, like a car or a beautiful home, might reflect my style or personality, but it doesn't determine my worth. These things are temporary, and at the end of my life, they won't be the focus of what truly matters. God isn't going to ask about the car I drove or the brand of my clothes. Instead, He'll care about how I lived, how I loved, and how I reflected His purpose in my life. I've realized how easily possessions can sneak into a higher priority than they deserve. Sometimes, taking care of the things I own, cleaning, maintaining, or upgrading them, can eat into time I could spend with family, friends, or even with God. It's not that having nice things is bad, but the more I accumulate, the more of my energy they demand. For example, I've had moments where I've prioritized organizing my belongings over making a phone call to someone who needed encouragement. That's when I know I need to step back and reevaluate. Things by themselves aren't the problem. It's how we let them affect us. They can become chains if we allow them to control our time, emotions, or resources. This reminds me of the story in John 4 where Jesus talks with the woman at the well. He tells her, "I have something better." That better is Him, His living water that never runs dry, His love that doesn't fade, His peace that doesn't break down like material things do. It's not about rejecting nice possessions, it's about making sure they don't own us. By keeping this perspective, I'm learning to enjoy what I have without letting it control me. When I focus on relationships, purpose, and the eternal instead of the temporary, I feel freer. It's not the things we own that define our lives. It's how we use them to serve, love, and reflect God's goodness. 7. The seventh lesson is about stewardship, which is really about partnering with God in how we live our lives. Stewardship isn't just about managing money, it's about how we handle our time, talents, and the opportunities we're given. It's not about chasing titles, roles, or achievements. It's about aligning what we do with who we are and how God has uniquely made us, ensuring our actions reflect our values and purpose. Luke 16:11 reminds us, "If you are faithful in little, you will be faithful in much." This verse speaks to me because it shows that honoring God doesn't depend on how much we have. It's about what we do with what we have, no matter the amount. It's like the lesson from The Psychology of Money, which explains that people often say they want $1 million, but what they really desire is the freedom to spend $1 million. That insight made me pause and ask myself, why do I want more? Am I trying to fill a deeper emptiness? Stewardship is about recognizing that life and its resources are gifts. When I think back to times when I struggled, like needing to borrow money from a friend to pay rent, those moments taught me humility and reliance on God. They reminded me that stewardship isn't just about having enough. It's also about being willing to receive help when we need it and trusting that God will provide through His people. It's natural to feel vulnerable when we're in need, but that's where God's love comes in. He doesn't intend for us to face life alone. The family of God exists so we can carry each other's burdens, support one another, and remind each other of His provision. Stewardship, then, isn't about selfish independence. It's about living responsibly and generously within a community. By being faithful with what we've been given, we grow spiritually and discover the joy of giving, receiving, and trusting in God's plan. Tell me in the comments below what your favorite Bible verse about money is. A lot of us wonder, what does God want me to do? Or what is my purpose? I want to help us think about those questions in a new way. See you in the next video.